Nestled next to the slums of Morytania sits the extravagant castle of Vercingetorix. Patrons come and go, with blood dripping from their mouths from the rush and excitement of seeing those misfortunate enough to enter its doors as slaves, fighting for their freedom from their vampire overlords. Climbing the steps into the bowels of the castle, you'll find the theatre, one that has taken many lives, yet the promise of hope means there is an endless gauntlet of those trying their luck. That is the Theatre of Blood. Now, I've already covered the history of vampires in this video, which you should definitely watch by the way, and in that I briefly mentioned Vercingetorix and Vercingetorix. But what's beneath the surface exactly? How did this castle become the pit of horrors that it is today? And the pit of loot, if you're lucky enough, I guess. But we do need to rewind time, quite a few thousand years back to be fair. Back to the time just after Zaros's fall and subsequent departure from Gielinor. With Zamorak's newfound power and control, he bequeathed the lands of Morytania to Lord Draken, and so the old vampire lord marched upon the Saradominus city of Hallowvale that resided within Morytania. Though the forces were relatively evenly matched, his victory came in the form of one simple trick. You see, the ruler of Hallowvale was an Icene named Queen Nefertiti, and she was fearless, except when it came to her family. And all it took was for one lone justiciar to be tortured endlessly by Lord Draken and Lady Vita to reveal a hidden tunnel into the city. Nefertiti's husband, Osertes, was kidnapped, and the queen voluntarily gave herself up, with the assurance that her husband would be safe from harm. But I don't have to tell you. You probably already know that it didn't happen. In fact, not only was his fate not secure, he was turned into a vampire named Vanstrom Klaus and slaughtered his own daughter. Not much is known about what happened to the queen herself, aside from the fact that she isn't buried alongside other Icene within their sacred graveyard. So could she still be out there, just waiting, plotting to take Lord Draken's life? Without the queen, the rest of Hallowvale fell and was razed, with the vampires capturing humans to be used for blood. But with the conquest of Hallowvale finished, Darkmire was brought into existence, and the slums of Morytania being constructed, Lord Draken had given Queen Nefertiti's castle to Lady Vita, a figure that was not only pivotal in the fall of Hallowvale, but was also a very close and trusted individual within Lord Draken's company. Under Lady Vita, the castle saw massive renovations to turn the once Saradominus stronghold into an overbearing sign of wealth and opulence for the vampires, with the lady herself hoarding her wealth alongside other powerful items within the depths of the fortress. It was here the castle was named Vercingetorix, which means Theatre of Blood in Hungarian. What was the idea behind the theatre though? Simple really. Step 1. Place powerful and deadly creatures within the depths of the theatre. Step 2. Announce that those brave enough to take on the challenges within could win their freedom from blood tithes. Step 3. Not tell anyone that if they actually manage to conquer the challenges within, that their final battle is you, Vercingetorix, and then absolutely demolish them. Step 4. Profit, blood stocks go up, not too bad. Unless it'd be Wook's going in, but you know, Verzik seeing her last days then. The theatre stands as a symbol of duality, oppression from the vampires, but as a symbol of hope for those brave enough to attempt it, even if they don't know that their victory will never come. Why go out for blood when you can have it come straight to you, right? I guess that's what makes it so appealing, especially for the vampires who attend to watch the spectacle of these fights, providing entertainment on top of food. I just want to focus on one idea here: hope. And hope is a powerful thing. And sure, it's one thing to have the overlord of the Iron Fist telling you, you can try it and maybe be free, I'm not lying, which might not fool some people, but it's a whole nother thing if you begin whispers. Whispers and rumours of someone who has conquered the theatre and gained their freedom, escaping Morytania and leaving Morytania behind without a second thought. And that brings us to Serafina. Serafina, the figurehead of hope in those wishing for respite from the eternal blood loss of living under the Vyres, was a simple human woman who survived all of the challenges within the Theatre of Blood and earned her freedom. Well, maybe not. but that's what they want you to think. And that isn't how the real story goes. Though this tale is spoken of verbally, you can read it for yourself by taking a trip to the Myths Guild bookcase, which I will say definitely give it a read, as I'll give you a summary of the tale here. Serafina had been the sole carer for her young brother since their parents had passed away, and though just children, they were unable to escape the fangs of their overlords. Though Serafina could cope with the consistent blood taking, her brother was too frail and grew weaker day by day, so Serafina considered her options and realised that only one option truly worked. Fighting the vampires? Certain death. Escaping this godforsaken city? What with all the Via guards? Impossible. That only left the Theatre of Blood. The book describes how Serafina had truly won, defeated every challenge and was allowed freedom. Even better, her brother got a share in glory of freedom, letting them leave and lead their own lives. Though the book does dwell on the mystery of where Serafina went, even if she won but was killed shortly after, it's the hope that her journey brought to people that keeps the theatre with a never-ending cast of poor souls vying for freedom. We don't have to dwell on said mystery, because we do know what happened. We do know the reality behind the tale. I've already mentioned that the theatre is essentially rigged. You win just to lose the last surprise hurdle. But Serafina was, and in a way still is, a real being. I say being because what she is may not be as human as you may think. You see, Serafina did exist, but she didn't attempt the Theatre of Blood. She cared deeply for her brother, and would have offered anything to ensure his survival. And so, when a vampire offered to save him in return for allowing him to experiment on them, she begrudgingly accepted. And though they would go on to live, it's definitely not in the way that they wanted. You remember that abomination that we fight during A Taste of Hope? Well, that is Serafina's brother. No longer frail, but no longer human. Poor kid. And Serafina, though less grotesque as the abomination, I'd like to introduce you to Serafina, the Maiden of Sugadinti. The first encounter of the Theatre of Blood is none other than Serafina herself. The experiments warping her body from that of a young woman into some type of shriveled blood monster? A different type of vampire maybe? All we know is that whatever remained of her sanity and hope was wiped away with the experimentation, and all that was left was this husk that had no control of her own actions. Upon her death, she drops her diary, and so unravels Serafina's true tale. One of heartbreak, broken promises, and sorrow. A bad trade that led to her brother being poisoned, and in ailing health, and how a man with a large medallion visited. He offered to ease their pain by experimenting on her and to save her brother, and well, he did say that there would be nothing left of that person that she once was, so I guess he didn't lie about that. But this diary ends with Serafina asking them to give her brother the diary, so he understands her sacrifice. Considering we pick it up off her corpse, it's safe to say that these two poor souls have finally found rest at our hands. Moving on from slaying the maiden, you'll notice a rancid smell slowly getting stronger and stronger the further you go through the theatre. Small buzzing starts to sound as you begin to look around, noticing a disturbingly large amount of flies, and then you begin to hear the quaking footsteps of something that sounds huge. The pestilent bloat presents itself as a second challenge within the Theatre of Blood, and he is not too easy on the eyes. This thing was created by a vampire only known as the Butcher, who created him from utilising various body parts from different creatures, and was on commission from Vita. But let's get into the anatomy of him. You've got 3 giant heads, the body of a disgruntled ogre, 4 blood buckets of the human variety, the sense of pride, 2 cyclops arms, 2 catabulpon legs, and an apple pie. A little bit scuffed, but I guess it worked. Upon delivery of this creature, the butcher found Verzik's room empty, aside from the numerous Nilokas littering the floor and walls. This report ends with the butcher, in a very broken way, telling us how Verzuk is dead and that the spiders remain, and how they're coming for him. Looking deeper into this, we get more mysteries starting to play out, anagrams and secret messages that spell out "don't trust her," Serafina was betrayed, Verzuk is dead, and Nilokas will rule. That really doesn't sound good. Carrying on through the corridors, you'll notice the abundance of cobwebs, the sound of skittering and different coloured lights shining the walls of the chamber that you've just entered. Making your way down to the central platform, we come across our next enemy, Nilokas Basilius. Hopefully you don't have arachnophobia, because you'll be fighting a lot of these little critters. You can't even fight the main boss without defeating a horde of the little ones. The journal that's dropped here teaches us how the Nilokas weren't native to Gielinor, instead being from the Via homeworld of Vampirium. It was in fact Verzuk Vita herself who brought swaves of these creatures into Gielinor when the vampires first travelled here alongside Zaros. There's 3 main species of Nilokas, but through generations of selective breeding by Lady Vita, 4 new species have been identified. The 3 main species are Nilokas Euskairos, Toxoblos, and Hagios. The new species are Nilokas Matomenos, Athanatos, Vasilius, and Principas. Nasty buggers, but hopefully they're not a bigger threat than this. Delving into the darkness below the theatre, you come across a dimly lit room, with one aspect catching your eyes. Blood red features, just barely noticeable, stare at you from across the room, before it begins to shift. And before you stands the mighty Sotetsig. His defeat reveals the nature of his creation, and it has more bearing than you may think. Naturally, this was a result of another vampire's experimentation, but this time on a dark beast, and how it could interact with the Shadow Realm. Over the course of 3 experiments, the creature not only gained more power, but submerged itself further into the Shadow Realm each time. Experiment 1 hints at the fact that something wishes to communicate through the Shadow Realm to the author, and they recount hearing something along the lines of "closer." Experiment 2 explains how alterations were made, and it could move freely beyond realms, which we see for ourselves during the fight as we can be transported into the Shadow Realm. This time though, the creature came back with a message. Abandon deeper. The tortured Experiment 1. Trapped. Follow within the Shadow's voice. This ends with the author sending the Dark Beast back in with a message. Who are you? Experiment 3 is the last account of the author, and it's not surprising. Though an answer was given, it was mangled into obscurity, and so the author decided to travel with the Dark Beast into the Shadow Realm to question whatever entity resided there. What was the answer that was mangled into obscurity? 3 words. So, Tet Sig. You may recall the name Zarpus if you watched my video on the story of the vampires. Zarpus was the last of his species on Vampirium, and we have more details from Lord Draken's journal regarding his hunt on his home planet. He describes how the Yarasa were true equals to the vampires, strong, fast, and unpredictable, so it was a sport to hunt each other. But that all ended when Zaros unified all the vampire houses, with the combined power of this unity driving the Yarasa to near extinction. And more importantly, Draken speaks on how he had no joy in the slaughter. There was no hunt, no excitement, no meaning to it. Though some did escape the slaughter, one by one they fell, up until the day the vampires left the world to join Gielinor, but one evaded them. Zarpus, the last king of the Yarasa. Draken described him as the apex predator of Vampirium, and now his target. And so Lord Draken went forth, and somehow, as it's not explained, went back to Vampirium to hunt Zarpus. I have not allowed myself to fall victim to the sloth and gluttony that has taken hold the rest of my people, Draken writes, before beginning his hunt, for once showing some true passion and feeling behind those tyrannical eyes of his. And Draken did hunt Zarpus, even captured him, but didn't kill him. Hence his presence as our 5th challenge within the theatre. Truly a menacing opponent. He fights with undying vigour until his last breath, and with him gone, this is where you'd win if the tales were true. You would be free, but alas, one more challenge lays before us. The lady of the theatre herself, Verzuk Vita, is our last challenge. But this fight does have a surprise for those that aren't ready for it, as the lady has changed, I think is the best way to put it. She's no longer just a vampire, but something more. Versik wasn't happy with how weak the Nilokas were when they were alone, only usually posing a threat when in a group. So she worked tirelessly to crossbreed them to create a perfect Niloka. She showcased the pinnacle of her work to Rhaenys during a tour of the theatre, though the spider bit her and died, which was just disappointing. If only that bite was where it stopped. Soon, she began to feel sick. A popular surgeon came to visit her and treat her, but the symptoms kept coming back and growing. Whenever the doctor would check her, he noticed tiny eggs. Though he operated and removed them, they very quickly returned, but he noticed something else inside her body too. I mean, she even began to grow, becoming morbidly obese as the days went on, and before the poor doctor could do anything, she exploded. Yep, I mean like kaboom exploded. It seemed like the spider had infected her with itself. As the Niloka queen emerged from her body, wanting to keep this a secret, she ordered for the doctor to be killed and declared that the time for Nilokas was here. You'd think that people would notice, right? A spider-vampire hybrid? Well, that's the thing. Whatever this hybrid was, it completely absorbed Lady Vita, taking her personality and traits, whilst being able to shapeshift itself at will. Which really isn't a nice thought. Spiders are bad enough, but having one grow inside of you? And that brings us here, to this moment. All challenges defeated, the Scythe or Avernic below our feet, and only one creature in our way. Having 3 phases, her boss fight begins with her sat down, to transition to her being hoisted up by chains, and then phase 3 is where she reveals her true form, the deadly Niloka Queen. Though we do defeat her, we don't kill her, unfortunately. She transforms into a bat and escapes, allowing us to plunder her vault and leave the theatre freely. Obviously she does keep coming back though, as you know, the show must go on. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. Quite a performance, I believe. 6 boss fights and the potential to beef up your bank account, which, you know, what isn't there to love? I've only ever done the entry mode once to get the quest keep unlocked myself, so I do actually need to give it a go, and I probably will in due time. I mean, we still have unresolved mysteries, let alone the vampire's storyline needing to continue. We have the Niloka threat existing and potentially playing out in front of our very own eyes. But if we know Draken, of which we don't really, I doubt he'd let them take everything he's worked so hard for, despite him seeming like he doesn't really care. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please do like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. But for now, thanks for watching, and see you next time.